Cities are amongst the great inventions of civilization, and for the first time in 2007, more than half of the global population was living in cities. That's the first time in our history that that's been true. 87% of Australians live in cities. Globally, cities occupy 2% of the landscape, but use about 75% of the resources. So cities are wonderful crucibles of invention and cultural change, but there's also an argument that they pose a threat to the environment because of that resource use. Cities, of course, occupy land, and often it's the best land, the land where biodiversity is richest, the land with rich soil and permanent water supplies tends to be occupied by cities. So there's a direct impact on ecosystems from the presence of cities. City populations demand novelty, and so city people will be looking for ornamental plants, often from overseas, or pets, exotic pets, to entertain them. Those kind of organisms tend to enter our country through our cities and then migrate across the landscape, where, as we've seen over the last 100 years and more, they have a major negative impact on our biodiversity. So there's no doubt that cities can be a negative for our biodiversity. There's another way of looking at cities though, and that is that by concentrating people, we actually take pressure off the land by having people in cities. Biodiversity is our life support system. Through ecosystem services such as water filtration through our forests, clean water is provided into our cities. There are apparently measurable benefits to people's psychological health and well-being from the presence of parkland in cities. And people generally want to live in cities that look and feel beautiful and well vegetated and with bird life around them. Within cities, we can get better biodiversity outcomes by the way we lay those cities out. So green spaces are obviously important, but the right kind of green spaces with some diversity of tree canopy and so on to encourage birds. Also, encouraging remnant vegetation in cities is a very positive way of getting good biodiversity outcomes even within a city boundary. In Australia, we can expect another 10 to 20 million people to be living in our cities by 2050. So we've got a big opportunity there to get things right or get things wrong as our city populations expand. One of the issues with people living in cities is that they become divorced from nature. We talk about an extinction of experience. People no longer experience biodiversity. So if we can get our cities and the interaction between people and biodiversity in our cities right, we can potentially reconnect the urban population to our biodiversity and see cities as centres for cultural change, which they have been throughout history, but a cultural change that brings people back into connection with nature and potentially see them not only as reducing their environmental footprint, but also connecting them back into nature in such a way that they become advocates for our nature and our biodiversity. One thing that people can do in cities is to look at a wonderful information tool that they've got at their disposal. The Atlas of Living Australia is an online resource available to everyone that will tell you what species you can expect to find in your area. So you can click on a map and look at all the species that you can expect to find near you. You can also enter data. You can become a citizen scientist. You can enter data that we, as scientists, can then use in terms of the changing and evolving distribution of our species. Australian cities are going to expand over the next few decades quite markedly in population. In doing so, our cities are going to have to grow in area and in environmental footprint. But we can still minimise the impact on biodiversity and indeed potentially benefit biodiversity in the way we manage that growth. It's going to need some research to help us to shape how our cities grow and develop. It's going to need the urban population to really get involved in determining how their cities grow and develop and evolve. But potentially there's an awful lot of good that we can do as these cities expand. It's a great opportunity for Australia.